In the last video I showed you how to model your box project. For the most part yours is going to look very similar to this. It's going to have an opening right in the middle. It's going to have a little lip right here. That lip will correspond with an opening on the top right here, and it will have a little bit cut away from our clamping boss right here. And so the next step is to CAM it. The next step is to get it ready to manufacture. So we're going to go to our manufacture tab and we're going to create a setup. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the orientation. As I usually mention, the orientation, if you follow the orientation that Fusion already has, you pay attention to your X and Y and Z axes, you can actually model just like I did here, where the model orientation is exactly what I'm looking for. The X is along the long direction, the Y is along the short direction, and Z is up. If you did not do that, that's okay. What we can actually do is change our orientation right here, and I usually use the Z-axis / plane and your X-axis, and what you do is you select either a line that lines up with your Z-axis or a face that is normal to your Z-axis. And you see how the Z is sticking straight up and down right here. That means that this flat surface right here is normal to it, kind of perpendicular in the other two directions. And so I can select that. The next thing it's going to ask for is the X direction, and so I can select really just any line that is parallel with the X direction. Sometimes you need to flip it. In this case, it's not really a requirement to flip it because I can just change this orientation, and we just want to pay attention to what is the positive along our positive X orientation. And so it can change or not. I'm actually just going to change it back to the model orientation, go back to my home view, and go to the next thing. For our mode, I always suggest doing a fixed size box. We know exactly what size the stock is going to be. It's 2.5 by 2.5 by 3. Again, that might be different based on the year-to-year requirements. I often change that based on kind of the stock I have available, so the various boards I have available to us. From there, I'm then going to go to our setup. I forgot to pick a stock box point. It's actually the default one is this top center, and so it's the middle of it but also on the top, and that's where we're going to set our machining tool, and we're going to zero it, and we're going to say, okay, this is the origin right here, and the machine will understand it. If you want to change that, you can select some of these other ones. Often we'll use that front left top corner, and you know it's the front left because the positive X will lie right along there, the positive Y will be there, and then the Z will be coming straight out from it. I'm going to keep it the center. You get to pick, you just have to remember. Okay. From there, there's actually going to be 3 operations here and 2 operations on the bottom, but there's going to be repeats. We're going to use a 2D pocket, and we're going to select our tool. I've already, let's see if I can find in our local library, I've already created a tool. I'll probably create another video to show you the tool and how to create one of those. But if not, there is a plus sign and you can change all the geometries and adjust that and make your own tool. But for now, I have that, so I'm not going to mention it in this video right here. And I'm going to select the tool. It already brought in the feeds and speeds that we want, and so none of this needs to be changed. That's going to be part of that video right there. Multi-axis, we don't have a multi-axis machine. That is to say, we have 3 axes, but it is possible to actually have additional axes beyond that. We're going to now select the geometry, and I've selected this pocket. Notice it says you could have numerous pockets, so you can actually select numerous things. We're not going to for this, but it is a way to kind of streamline things. Less operations. The heights we don't really change. All that really does is say, okay, where's the material, where's a safe place to kind of move during the operation, and then where should I start and stop from. and that's what those different different heights mean, but we really just kind of keep them the default. From there, we're going to go to passes. We always want to remove the stock to leave, because what that would do is leave a little bit of extra stock, which would be fine if you're going to then sand some extra or something like that. But for us, we're going to reduce the amount of sanding we do to the extent possible. For our multiple depths, we want to make sure that our maximum roughing step down is 0.1875 and that multiple depths is checked. And the next thing is looking at our ramp. All this other stuff we just kind of keep the default, but this ramp type we're going to plunge, not plunge outside of the stock, but rather just plunge. And what that will do is move straight down through the material. There are some end mills that are not, they don't have a center that cuts, and since they don't have a center that cuts, it creates this big helix that slowly cuts through and will cut through the entire material. We do have a center on ours, so we're just going to plunge. From there, we can hit OK. We're going to notice that this cuts out the right spot, and then that our lines are not a million lines lined up with each other, but they are all kind of evenly spaced. Each of those blue lines is where it's going to be cutting. The green is where it's going to go kind of link from one of the paths around to where it goes to the next path around, and then the next path around, and then goes back to the original spot to then lift up. So this looks correct right here. If you see a red helix, then know that you have to change that from not having a helix to having a helix. The next thing we're going to do is a 2D contour. This goes around the shape that you select, and so we've got the same tool. We don't have to select that tool again. It has the same feeds and speeds. We're still not doing multi-axis. Our contour, our geometry, we're going to select the bottom. I like to select the bottom because it actually helps with our heights, and that's going to be the contour that's going to go on. The heights we can leave, and all that. Then for our passes, we want to make sure that we're still doing multiple depths and that we have 0.1875. That's half of the tool diameter, and that's just kind of a general guideline for that. Then for our linking, these don't do helixes, so that part's just fine. So once we hit OK, you'll notice again there's a bunch of lines that have cut. It's okay to have little corners like this. As part of our operation, we just kind of use a saw and cut those off manually. So this is great for us right now. We're actually going to have another contour that is then going to cut this little portion of the lid off. I went right past the tool because that's already selected. The feeds and speeds are already selected. So we have the geometry there. The heights, again, we never change. This only has one depth because 0.1 is less than 0.1875. I'm not even going to add in the multiple depths. And then for the linking, again, there is no ramp, there is no helix or anything like that, so we're just going to hit OK. And this travels down, goes around in a circle, or around the shape, and then comes back up. So that is the entire setup for the box bottom. What I can then do is flip this over, and I'm going to get a good view for what I believe now is kind of the front of it, thinking that this is the top. And so if I right click, I can set my current view as front, and then if I select that upper right corner from that view cube and right click on that view cube again, I can set the current view as home. And what that's going to do is every time I hit the home button, it's going to jump back to this spot. And it's kind of a way to get a good orientation that you don't have to keep resetting all the time. From there, we need a new setup because we have a completely new orientation. This time we do need to use the need to select parts of it. So again, I use the z-axis / plane, and the x-axis. The x-axis looks fine, so I'm going to leave it. I don't actually need to change that. And then for our box point, I actually do want it to be right there on the top center, and so that's where it is. I'm going to leave that. For the stock, it's going to go from the previous operation, previous setup, so I could change it to fixed size box, or I could say from previous setup. It's going to be the same either way. For the post process, I like to put more information, so I'm going to put in my name, box top, and then comment. Remember, I like to see the tool that we're going to use, so that the program comment right at the top is pretty obvious on what we're going to use. Then we hit OK. From there, it's actually a little bit easier than the other one. We're going to create a 2D pocket. The tool's already selected, the feeds and speeds are already selected, the pocket, the height we don't change. We do need to remove the stock to leave, but we are going to add in the maximum roughing step down. From there, the linking, we just have to make sure it's not a helix, it's got to be a plunge. That's just going to speed it up, and it works just fine for our purposes. There we go. This is going to go in 2 different layers because it was 0.2, so it's going to do part of it and then do that last part later. We do another contour like so. Again, I'm skipping the tool because it's already selected. I'm skipping the feeds and speeds because they are coming in from the previous operation. The geometry I selected, the heights we don't change, the multiple depths we will change to 0.1875, and then from there, the linking, this doesn't actually have our helix or anything, and so if we hit OK, we can see that there's that operation. If we look at our 2 different operations, we can see that this setup will cut that top portion. Each one of these setups will get post-processed individually, and so now that I have this, I'm going to hit setup, and I'm going to hit my, I guess it's already up there, NC program. The name and number, I guess it didn't come in, or I never changed it, so your name, and then the project, any other notes. So this one was setup 2 was the bottom, or yeah, setup 2 was the bottom. For the comment, 3/8 end mill. Our post is the Intelitech. That's the machine we're going to use. It's in inches. We're going to create the NC program for sure. We're going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Conley Box Bottom. For all of these selections, we don't actually need to change anything. It's technically a pro mill. Optional stop, often I'll change that. I'll remove that one. What that does is it stops the machine. It has the machine just kind of stop and wait, and that's why we have to hit the go button a few times. We don't use a tool changer, and so there is no tool changer available. We can remove that. Safe retracts we can keep as G53. This has to do with how it writes that G code. We can leave it as is. We can leave that there, and then we've already removed the helical move, so that part doesn't really matter. That part is just fine there. And so once you change the machine, the names and all of that, you put that in, change the optional stop or use tool changer, it should actually work either way. I'm going to check the operations. So this has pocket 1, contour 1, and contour 2, and that's what I want. And then what I should be able to do is hit post, and that saves this file. And so from there, you may have to save as to go into the right spot. I already have a spot for it. This is actually this file, so mine goes in there. Just make sure it's in a spot that you know where it should be. From there, you're going to do the same operation to get the other code. You're going to notice it's nice and long. There's going to be a lot of lines, but this should be all of the code that you actually need. Since I'm going through the entire operation from start to finish, I did want to show you another thing that I expect to see. I plugged all of my code in. You can save it and you can open it in NC Viewer, but I just copied and pasted it, and I'm going to hit plot, and you can see a couple different things. First, that it looks generally like the outline of that box. There's no kind of errant tool changes and all that, but I do want to see that you have gone through here and post-processed, so that if it shows up in here, it should in theory work on our actual machines. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this and then put in your other code, take a screenshot of that. So it's going to be 2 NC files and 2 screenshots, and then I can see that you have double checked to make sure that the NC code will actually work.